This is live.
That's
Yeah.
right. We're now live.
Recording.
Right.
So you can swear now.
Right. I'm Gordon Morgan. I'm a member of the executive of the Scottish Independence Convention. And in today's podcast, we're discussing the whole question about Ferguson, shipbuilding, future shipbuilding, and generally what's going to happen after this and the yes vote, as well as consider perhaps the possibility, although it's remote, a no vote. I'm joined today by Tam Brotherstone, who is from an ex-UCS shop steward, and Davie Torrance, who was the chair of the Draftsmen Union at UCS. For those out there of a younger generation, UCS was a big sit-in, was very successful and saved shipbuilding on the Clyde in the early 70s. We're now faced with the possibility of the closure, the last of the shipyards in the Clyde, Ferguson's, although this morning's news is that there's a possibility that shipbuilding will be retained. But I'd like to start off with Tam, as to give us some reminiscences on the struggle which took place on the UCS and the lessons that might be learned for the struggle to save shipbuilding again.
Well, a wee correction. First of all, it wasn't a sit-in. What we decided today, we had a full order book. We had a hostile government whose policy was no help for lame ducks, right? They were not committed to industry even at that early stage. That was in 1970-71, and therefore we advanced a tactic called the work-in. But basically what happened was, when I was made redundant, as I was fairly quickly in the campaign, I went back into work, and workers all over the world donated money to a fighting fund that allowed me to get to my work, and I had 2 kids at that time, and I was able to sustain 18 months to 2 years of that struggle. And basically what we did was we completed the work. We said to employers, well, your choice is only not to pay us, right? But there's no choice or no accepting that you are going to close shipbuilding operations, which would have decimated and destroyed Glasgow and Clydebank. It would have absolutely wrecked it. So here we are again. Here we are again. When I started my apprenticeship, that was 1965, there were between 10 and 12,000 people worked in a single shipyard. I think we're reduced to, in total, Davie, what's there's about
3,000, 3,500.
3,500. You know, scandalous, because it takes you generations to build up shipbuilding skills. And these are vital and the complicated skills that I'm third generation. My grandfather, my father, myself, my brother the same. So it takes you a long time to build up these skills, and yet they're just scattered to the wind as though they don't matter. Working people produce and do everything. You take £1 million and you put it in a drawer, and come back in 1,000,000 years, and you'll still have £1 million. You give 1,000,000 men £1, and immediately it's into the economy, and immediately people are working in order to satisfy that market. Right? So money doesn't make a single thing. It's people who do that. And I made that exact point during the UCS, and I'm making it here as well. These workers in Ferguson, dreadful, working men and women clinging on their fingernails to survival. The reputation that Clyde shipbuilding had is second to none. It was a byword. Clyde built, sure built, and he's heard that. Clyde built, sure built. That's what it meant. I mean, we built something on the Clyde. It was a quality article. It was the best that you could. But we built the Rolls Royce of ships, and yet, and people can say, oh, it was all about your trade union disputes. Nonsense, Davie. Am I right? Nonsense. We're in chronic underinvestment, chronic bad management, chronic bad decisions. So that was your history, and the workers there had enough sense to say, nah, you're not on. That was Jimmy Early's famous saying. I always remember it stood in the year the liquidator, and they said, nah, you're not on. We're not accepting that you can just wipe out a community like that. And we won.
Davie, do you want to add?
Yeah, well, Tam's 100% right. We did win a major victory then. Now, after that victory, we actually convinced the Labour government at that particular time to nationalise the shipbuilding industry, which they did. Then, but over a period of time, it was a death by 1,000 cuts, as they cut every shipyard throughout the UK until we ended up with government basically in Yarras, on the Clyde and Ferguson's. That is the reality. So we did, and that's why I'm going for independence. I'm a member of the Labour Party, but I'll be voting for independence because Westminster decided that it would invest in the city of London and no in manufacturing. And we know more exactly about the shipbuilding as they cut them right down to the last couple of years. Now, the position we're in at the moment, I think it's awful important. I'll just talk about government first, then move on to the Ferguson's thing. At the moment, BAE Systems own the Yarra Yard, but they don't own the Govan Yard. It's leased from the Clyde Port Authority. So the plan at the moment is a kind of a consultation exercise to make it whether it's going to be a two-site option, the Clyde or a win. The word in the state is quite clear. They're going to shut Govan and keep Yarras open. That's the reality. They've put 3 ships into Govan, 3 ocean patrol vessels, but they'll be the last ships if we don't do something about it. Ferguson's is another classic case where the last 2 ships they built were put in there by Calmac. Now Calmac is 100% owned by the Scottish Government, and they put 2 ferries in there. Didn't have to put them out to tender because they were experimental ships with fancy engines. Now, to give a wee bit of background at the moment, because of the position where the workers are basically the shop stewards and the yards and stuff like that, they're arguing that if you vote yes, the Ministry of Defence will not place Navy ships in the Yarras. But the reality is there's nowhere else to build them. The place at Portsmouth is shut, the workforce scattered to the 4 winds. There is no way, unless we spend a complete fortune, to restart that again. So it's a political argument about trying to frighten workers. Now, just on the side, that the convener of the shop stewards in Govan, Jamie Webster, has now come out and said quite clearly, which is a break from what the rest of the stewards are saying, that if you vote yes, the warships will still be built in Yarras. So we've got that position developed, and a resplit in the shop stewards movement in that sense, but we'll now take up the argument and pursue it. To see the background of shipbuilding in that company to Ferguson's, we have a position where the last couple of ferries that Ferguson bid for were built in Gdansk in Poland, and that's the ones that sail for Rossi to Queen's Bay. And they put in a complaint to the European Commission that they'd been subsidised by the Polish government. After a long period of time, that complaint was upheld, but the ships were still built in Gdansk and Ferguson didn't get them. Now we've had a look at the position. Calmac ferries owned, as I say, by 100% by the Scottish Government. They require 15 new ferries according to Transport Scotland over the next 10 years. And we're saying quite clearly the smaller of the ships should get into Ferguson's to be built. The larger the ships could go to Govan, and to retain the thing and we build an argument for building merchant ships again. But that would be the initial position. And you can get round the European rules, because the European rules, Article 346, claim an exemption if you can prove that the ferries or the ships you're building are a strategic national reserve. I was working in government 20 years ago. We got an order for a Brittany ferry. The French government stepped in and claimed that that was a strategic reserve of the French government or the French country. And the order was taken office and put into France. So it's how you box the rules in the EU. So the Germans, the Italians and the French, best up to them, that's their right to look after their workers, are doing that. What we are saying to the Scottish Government is you should place the Calmac ferries and the Northern ferries at sail for Aberdeen into, call it what you like, strategic naval reserve. That then makes them, you're right, you can place them anywhere you like. Welcome the position in Ferguson today where Jim McCall is putting in a bid. If that doesn't work, then the argument the Scottish Government should take it into public ownership. And then we tweak the deal so they can put the ferries in. So that's the position. if you go to political wills, Jim Saws put it quite succinctly. There's more than one way to skin a cat. If you go to political will, you can get the answer. So that, I think, I don't know if that answers all the questions, but that's my views at the moment.
Yeah, I had a wee comment just on, you mentioned about investment. One of the things we've been studying is the level of investment in the UK as a whole, and we invest less than any other country in anything, particularly into manufacturing. In fact, the calculation is that there's only 14% of GDP is investment, but 11% of that's just to replace stuff, and 3% is taken up by the growth in population and all the rest of it. So in practice, the UK invests nothing. And
Can I give an example to that?
Yeah.
The classic example, the replacement ferry between Stornoway and Alpro is getting delivered from Germany within the next couple of weeks. I checked out that it's a yard called FSG, I couldn't pronounce the German name, and it's a family-owned firm that's been on the go for nearly 200 years, similar to the yards in Scotland. But they've got a massive cover, 500 metre long, 50 metre high, can build 2 ships undercover, financed by that family firm. Obviously from loans from the German national government and the German local government. They've got a production line that builds cabins like you build cars. They have machines that can set up all the steel up with lasers and turn them over. They don't necessarily don't need to turn them over, they can do one side of the building. We haven't spent a penny in the yards on the Clyde. And it's even, go back to the UCS, some of the machinery in John Brown's at the time was stuff that was repatriated for the Germans in 1918. No, I mean, it's absolute nonsense, that thing. So this guy, Jim McCall, who's putting a bid for Ferguson, is saying they need massive investment and he's prepared to do it. I mean, so that's the answer. Shipyard workers all over will work at the same speed. It's the investment you've got in behind them that counts. That's how you actually can build things more efficiently. So you're 100% right, sir. That's investment that counts.
Yeah. And I mean, when you think about it, we've got a burgeoning oil industry, regardless of what people are saying. Because I noticed that whilst our man Woods is only talking about the oil reserves that he can massage the figures about, what about West Coast oil? Now, I can tell you a personal anecdote. I worked in the ore terminal at Hunterston when I think it was a BP exploration rig tied up there. Right? That was way back. And of course, being a shipyard worker and a steel worker, you go on board and you have a crack with the guys. And I said, oil here? Absolutely, they said. Absolutely, but you'll not get at it. Because that's the busiest stretch of water under the water, there's traffic there, and we will be restricted to do any kind of work here because of the MOD. Now, 30 years later, it all comes out. I mean, Heseltine actually said, well, I was a defence secretary. I took a decision based on my you know, the industry secretary could decide what he wanted, but I was protecting my corner, and it was in the best interest of the defence. Nobody discussing what was in the best interest of the west of Scotland. Ayrshire is one of the most depressed regions in Europe. No, that's why we need anybody that actually says that voting no will protect our industries. I'm just going to say this. See if we were better together. Why are we no better together? Why are we no? Why are we in this? Why are 88 guys hanging with their fingernails, hoping that somebody's going to ride in like a white knight on a charger and save them? That's disgraceful in this day and age. 21st century, and people are actually, one person can decide 88 people's future, just like that. And that's why we need to take charge. And I've got to say, see right now, see any industry, I don't know an awful lot about business, but I do know this. See if you get one product and one customer, your business is already in decline. It's already in decline.
Seeing as you touched on the oil issue, I mean, I think it's fair to remember in the same decade as you were all fighting, it was largely when the North Sea oil discoveries were all coming on stream. But the cabinet hid exactly how much was coming out, how much it was worth, and we were told in a referendum at 79 that oh no, all run out in a wee while and suddenly
Aye.
hundreds of billions later. And I don't think there's any real coincidence. I'm not maybe being too cynical here, but he's the same guy who produced a report 3 or 4 months ago which said the reserves could be, extractable reserves could be increased by 3 or 4 times what they were. And suddenly,
Aye.
strangely enough, there's a referendum just due, and he's looking and saying, oh no, you're overestimating these reserves by massively. But he drew the figures up. So, I mean, this is, strike me if I'm being cynical here, but I think we're getting all with the lies being told about all of this stuff.
One thing you're going to learn about the British state is that they'll protect themselves and they'll tell any lie to do it. I mean,
Absolutely.
the other thing was Macron produced a report which was never published, and Healy admitted that. During the UCS we had a Ridley report where 2 years before the Upper Clyde Shipbuilding was set up, they'd already decided to butcher it. No, the plans went through to withdraw the capital, the loans, and to do it. So they're very, very cynical. I mean, they're real. British state's going to protect itself. Well, they'll do anything to do it. So always remember that. But I tell you, we democratic, so I think it was about Upper Clyde Shipbuilding when things change. They try to say to people about what will happen after the yes vote. It's like going into the boss and saying, right, we want a 10% wage increase. Beat it, you're not on. So you get a fortnight and say, I want 10% wage increase, but you've got a strike vote. You then have a different negotiation, understand me? When we took over at the shipyards, even in the old days of the draftsman, you called the chief out, Mr. this, Mr. that. We did deal, we get meetings and company time. It was a very gentlemanly thing. And then we took over, I had to get in and see this chap and say, look, you understand, Mr. Ross, the workers are now taking over the aye. I said, but the reality is, you're still the chief draftsman. You will still control discipline, you'll still control the technical position, and you'll operate as you operated before. Only position will be if the shop stewards and the workers make a decision that you disagree with, then it'll be the shop stewards and workers' decision that will carry. He says, I accept that. You know, so that things change. You know, the only thing that man says that's constant is change. But if you've got the power, you've got that, and you've got that, the other side come to the negotiating table with a different frame of mind, and you've got to remember. So we have got to get a yes vote. It changes everything.
Well, absolutely. On the whole question of the currency thing, which I know is a bit together a big drum that they keep on beating. The fact of the matter is, Alex Salmon is not going to negotiate with the monkey. He's going to negotiate with the organ grinder, and he's not going to get the monkey, regardless of how hard he tries, is not going to get Alex Salmon's bottom line, because Alex Salmon would not deserve a reputation of being a negotiator if he did that. Right? This is what we think is best for the Scottish people. This is what we're going to do. I want us to remember those words, incidentally, because I think that what we need to be building is a sovereign nation of sovereign people, where the people, you take decisions as a nation on what is good for your people. I would say this: if you've got a dysfunctional family that doesn't look after its children, what do the children do? They leave home, don't they? A nation, in my humble opinion, is just an enlarged family. And a nation that actually can guarantee its people a decent future, decent wages and decent hopes and aspirations, doesn't deserve the name of being a nation. It's simply just a name on a map, it's just a geographical description, and it does not deserve to be treated with any respect if it doesn't look after its people. And I think that that's what we do. We will make mistakes in a new Scotland, there's no doubt about that, but there'll be mistakes that we stand or fall by. There'll be our mistakes.
And do you want to
Gordon,
tell us more?
Take some questions.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Tam, you touched on how the skills have been built up over generations. Can you dwell a bit more, like, because all these skills that you said your father, your grandfather, and all that, they could be lost forever in this high-skilled labourers.
Well, okay, perhaps the best way, and it kind of highlights how you need to have some kind of authority and some kind of control. Almost in the same week, I think it was the Scottish Government that signed a £4 billion agreement to develop the refinery and gas containers in Shetland. The same week, BAE paid off 850 workers. Now, is it beyond the realms of our intelligence that you could have said, hey, hold on a minute, a bit of local content in that £4 billion agreement. That, I tell you what, see in Norway, you don't put a lick of paint on a rig unless there's some local content in that. And so it's about that. You know, we're very proud of our renewable energy industry. See, when we prove it as successful, who's going to get the benefit of it? Because the bulk of them are built with Siemens and, you know, Italian and Spanish. Those wind farms could be built in the shipyards like Ferguson's.
Yes.
The same skills are there. In fact, when you build a ship, it's probably, in terms of steelwork, it's about the highest degree of steelworking, if you like. There isn't anything that you can't build that's made of steel if you're a steelworker in a shipyard. Nothing. So it's having that wide view of your nation and your people, and how whenever you discover a great bonus like oil, that it's no like one small group says, oh goody, and the rest of us can just take the droppings off the table. That's not what it's about. It's actually about us using that, and which we know is finite. We're not stupid. God's not making any more oil. No. You know. But what we've got to do is to utilise what comes off of that in the interim, that we build an industry and build a society that's going to sustain our people in the future, and not just squander it. Mrs. Thatcher used that to squander. She squandered her oil wealth in order to advance her dogmatic ideas, and they're still at it. The programme that Thatcher started out has continued unbroken, regardless of which government is elected. It's continued unbroken. They're on a mission to privatise civic society. That's the name of the game. And that's why their supporters like Tony Abbott is shouting. There was a demonstration of 85,000 people in Sydney against austerity cuts. He's part of the International Austerity Alliance. This is happening all over the world. And that's why I think when Scotland votes yes, we'll be the point of the spear that actually says there's another way to do things. We don't need to have austerity. We don't need to drive down that road which actually allows bankers £1 billion bonuses while steelworkers and shipyard workers are sitting in the house. Not a bit of it.
Davie, just point out that if it's a no vote, both Labour and the Tories are committed to continuing austerity and keeping to the same budget.
Absolutely.
So, as a member of the Labour Party on this, how would you think the effect will be in overturning that agenda in independent Scotland?
Well, see, once the vote takes place, hopefully there'll be a massive turnout. And the event, I know then obviously the day after it'll be torture. But then, I'm 76 years of age. I've been fighting since I was 15. So the fight continues. And I think what will happen, you've awakened the people, you've got the genie out the box, you've opened out the bottle, you've opened Pandora's box, call it what you like. People are starting to talk. I've been at more meetings in the last 6 weeks than I've been in my life really. So people are thinking, then they're going to judge what happens. Because all the lies will come out then, won't they? All the lies they told us will suddenly be found out, I think. And we've got to organise and put them out. Then come, was it the election in 2016, is it? I think the Labour Party, if it doesn't change, will be destroyed. Because the people go, what the hell was that he told us? That was absolute nonsense. We're going to get Britain back. I mean, I've not been to a Labour Party branch for a wee while because I found it very frustrating to put it. I would have strangled some of them. My MP was wee John McFall, Lord John McFall. I mean, we'd be kidding, you know. I mean, and unfortunately, the branch of the Labour Party in Clyde Bank is really almost decimated. So, but we've got to revive that again. But hopefully, I'm still hopeful. I'm convinced actually it will be a yes for it. We then have to dismantle what's the Labour Party, reform it, find allies, and maybe, I'm not saying we'll form new parties, but we've got to find allies that we move forward to a new Scottish Parliament that's it's going to be in the interest of the working people. No is the answer to the question. If it's a no, we carry on fighting. Just reorganise and carry on.
See, I think one of the things we can do at this discussion is that we can demand all of the parties in Holyrood make a public declaration that says Ferguson Shipyard's not going to shut. That's our avowed intention. And that's what'll
Yeah.
separate out the sheep from the lambs.
I agree with you there. There seems to be part of the product of Thatcher which is still there, is this idea that somehow or another you can plan how many teachers you're going to have, you can plan how many police you're going to have, you can plan this and that, but you're not allowed to plan the economy when it's all linked together.
Aye, absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
We've seen that I'll tell it again, Cal might need 15 new ferries over the next 10 years. There's a plan, they've come in and said that's what they need. So we've got to make sure they plan to build them in
Yeah.
Scottish Yards. It's as simple as that.
And we need a Scottish Navy.
Aye, I mean, that's another argument. I mean, just looking at it for the Calmac thing.
Aye.
Because they need ferries for the islands, you know, so, aye, yeah.
They need
David,
rigs.
you're talking about Gdansk and the overseas
Yeah.
shipbuilding industries. Is the approach of the government different there to what's been here in terms of supporting the industry and investment in that?
100%. I mean, no, to go away from Shipyard, remember Siemens won the order for the trains against the English company. If you actually analyse what happened there, the two companies would be producing the trains in almost the same kind of way and almost at the same cost, but Siemens in Germany get a loan off the German government at a much lower interest rate. When building ships in the UK, I'm assuming it's still, well, we've not built any missing ships in a wee while, but the reality was the owner had to be doing a 10% deposit on the kit right away. Then it was stage payments over the 2 years. You know, the interest on that would make a difference between abroad and here. But the classic story is the Italian shipyards. The steel they were getting was always 15% cheaper than the steel we could buy, because there was always late. It was a penalty clause in the steel. So every time they get the steel, 15%. I'll tell you a laugh. You remember a guy called Brian Wilson? Long hair, West Highland Free Press.
Yes.
He got his hair cut.
CND.
Low stories, politics.
Aye.
When he was a minister, we weren't arguing with him about, but no, the same thing. We like the French, well, with the Brittany Ferry, the French stepped in and took it over. So obviously they were subsidising it in some sort of way. Who knows how they do it? So is the Germans and so is the Italians. And we say to him about this, and he says, well, we don't know about that. Could you go away with your comrade and come back, and if you find these things out, give it to my office? I says, yeah, your head's buttoned in your back. How many embassies have you got throughout the world? How many people work for MI5, MI6? And you went to daft shops, sure, to go and find that out. Away you go, you dummy. I mean, that's you're up against a Labour minister. And he thinks we're stupid by saying, we've got to go and find out how they subsidise the industries. I mean, it just meant he wasn't interested. That's the way it is saying, you know. What's his politics?
I think that's the first time I've heard him likened to Samson.
Well, I'm not
Sorry,
a Bible man,
question.
you know.
No. He's a liar.
Sorry,
It's
Chris.
in a similar subject, in fact, you're saying Tam, about your one product with customer, that's, you know, the business is doing it anyway, you can't have that level of narrow thought. When you're, Scottish Davie, the Calmac stuff, that's great, you're always your own internal stuff, but where's the breadth of thought to say there's ships getting built in Dubai or for Dubai or whatever? Who's actually in the industry looking outward and saying we should be winning those contracts as well, and why aren't we doing it first of all, and if we do it, is it possible to win those contracts economically? What's the thoughts on that?
Well, my feeling is, in the first instance, the British government put all its eggs in one financial services basket. Right? I think Mrs. Thatcher had the view that she would, that the British government would be the bankers of Europe. Right? They would be able to dispense loans and so on, and that they would also have a low wage economy. Highly skilled workers, low wage economy. But unfortunately the Berlin Wall came down and the Germans got access to 14 million highly skilled, well educated, right, well organised industrial workers, right, and that just blew the plans completely right out the water. And so you're saying, what are the possible? If this guy McCall, if he does the same thing with Clyde, with Ferguson Shipyard, as he's done with Clyde blowers, right? Then yes, that will be the breadth of vision. The breadth of vision needs to be somebody doing an analysis of the shipping market. Just remember Ken Douglas,
Yeah, fine.
He was a naval architect who ran the Govan Shipbuilders experiment. And what he did was to analyse world shipping. And he realised that yes, at that time the flavour of the month was a million and a half ton tankers and bulk carriers. But he actually analysed it and discovered that the bulk ports where ships were being loaded up couldn't handle these huge carriers. I myself, I was part of a team that unloaded the largest dry cargo vessel ever unloaded in Great Britain at the ore terminal at Hunterston. We unloaded 247,000 tonnes of ore. Right? That bulk carrier was only half full. I think it was a Kayamaru, but I'm not sure, don't quote me on it. Right? It was a 500,000 tonner, but it only had 250,000 tonnes on it, because the port that it was loading up at, it had 1 foot of freeboard to get out. It was nearly sitting on the boat. Now, what Ken Douglas did was to analyse world shipping and said, look, the vast bulk of ports in the world are not deep berthing ports. There are no ports that actually lend themselves to bulk carriers. Right? And he devised a ship called the Clyde class, which ran from 2 holds to 5 holds, Davie, am I right in saying that? So basically it was like a standardised vessel, right, that you could just, depending on what your uses were, you could actually add additional. We were rattling about, what, 6 months? Production line stuff, right, real production. Now, I'm sure the industry has moved on quantum leaps since then, but I can remember quite clearly working on a particular job, which I don't bore you with the technical details, but it took us 3 weeks to do it, and Japanese shipyards were doing it in 3 days, the same job, just because of the technology they deployed. In Japan, they completely levelled shipyards that had only been built for 10 years and retooled them again. What chances are, when the Americans came into Clyde, and you can quote me on this, Fox was the president, Marathon Oil Company, and they walked around like Texans do, 10-gallon hats, cowboy boots, you know, big leather belts, you know, like something Oklahoma, right? And Fox turned to his second in command, the guy called Elmer Keyes, and he said, gee Elmer, just imagine what these guys could do if we gave them some tools. there were cranes in John Brown's that were so elderly that at night the crane drivers had to anchor them onto the bollards on the deck, right, with straw, had to chip, because if a wind got up during the night, it just blew, it wrecked the steering gear. It was a 3-day job repairing the steering gear. They were ancient. One of the cranes actually just collapsed, just gave up the ghost. That was what we were building ships with. The Americans could not believe it. They actually emptied the shipyard and they transported an awful lot of the tools and equipment we had back to the States, into their industrial museums. I'm not kidding you on, you couldn't write it.
One of the big picture I think you've got to look at as well, we've got to concentrate and we don't pick the fights. No, these presenters we face, we've got to face it, we don't see the big picture sometimes. We brought it out just after our Clyde ship, Shipbuilders. Britain, the whole UK, particularly Britain at the moment, is an island. It means we're surrounded by water. 96% of the goods that are exported and imported come by ship. Not one of these ships are now built in the UK. Now, that was a political decision taken by the Tories. We could, if the government decided to give us the same kind of investments and tax breaks as the other, can start competing with the Germans, the Japs and anybody else to build ships for Britain. We also could change the British Merchant Navy back to maybe a British Navy that gives jobs to British people. Because at the moment, most of the British ships have got a captain and a first officer British, the rest are best of luck to the Filipinos getting a job, but cutting the wages. And the same with the big cruise ships. All the guys working under, you don't see, paid peanuts. I mean, outrageous. I mean, the Americans, for the ships that go around the coast, was a slightly different argument, but I've got the Jones Act, which any ship that does has got to be built in America and crewed by Americans. And all the American-made ships that go over the world have got to be crewed by Americans, built by Americans. You know, so the big capitalist country has looks after its position. Now we as an nation must be off our head if we don't look after what the merchant navy.
Have you seen any encouragement from the Scottish Government that they would invest or give low interest loans to change the landscape?
Well, I've had a talk with some of them, right, at some of the meetings going up, and explained the position with Carmack and Ferguson's and govern that. I'm very encouraged by what they've done. The two, for a concrete position, the two hybrid ferries were put in Ferguson's, the last two ships they built were put in by the Scottish Government under a position that they were experimental engines. So they put the two ships in the Scottish Government. So yeah, that was a plus for the Scottish Government.
You touched on West Coast oil and the potential that there is there. Also, if the removal of Trident, the No campaign is kind of pushing the fact that there'll be job losses involved in that. How transferable are the skills from the workers that are already working up in Faslane and also the workers that are working in the shipyards that are being closed down at the moment to service the needs of West Coast oil if there was to be exploration going on there?
We're ready to fill in.
Looked at that before in a different argument about before the talk of independence, but actually I've been against nuclear weapons all my life. I've got relations working fastly, okay, and we checked out how many people actually work on directly with the nuclear arm. No, there's nuclear engines, subs, there's nuclear armed, they're two different things, understand that? So the nuclear armed ones, there's only 550 workers out of about 6,000. And the skills, for by the guys who work 100% in nuclear stuff, well, the rest are 100% transferable. You know, so there's no problem. And as far as I can make out, the argument is you use Faslane as the Scottish Marine base and Army base. But the skills are, most of the guys that work there are working in the shipyards.
Right.
My brother works in Faslane, and he served his time in Rolls Royce as a turner, worked in John Brown Engineering, worked in John Brown Shipyard, so completely transferable. And there's a major, all the big oil rigs will need to be dismantled very soon, so that work can be done anywhere in Scotland, but it could be done in the Clyde as well. So yeah, the skills are transferable, no problem at all.
I think that's one of the things, there is actually a skilled worker shortage
Yes,
in this,
exactly.
and
Yeah.
we're not actually investing enough in engineering training.
Yeah.
There's a definite shortage of engineer training, and if there was a plan where you can see 5 years down, we might revive apprenticeship schemes and combine with university and high level training, so they all be a win-win for everybody around all the feeders.
The position in BE systems is quite, we work in the shipyards, and we years and years ago argued that every apprentice should have a right to go through the system, like the City Guilds, I don't know what it's called now, the higher national, and if they had the potential, they should be able to go to university paid by the company. Now we won that 40 years ago. Now that thing has continued under BE systems.
Yeah.
So between Govan and Yarras at the moment, I'm not sure, but something like 700 apprentices and graduates are employed there. So that's quite a thing. You know, if you could transfer that into commercial, all these guys could build they could do the commercial thing, but it's that skill, as you say. But one of the biggest training, I mean, the shipyard's some of the best places to train people in Ireland, you know, so it's amazing what you can do.
Yeah. Aye, and it's got a spill off into a wide range. And if you can build something as sophisticated as a ship, there's very little that you can't build. Right? Very little that you can't build. You know, and I can remember, because I'd worked in Marathon Oil Company at the time that we discovered oil. In fact, I worked in the first two exploration rigs that went up to the North Sea, despite the fact that we were told that we needed American expertise to develop the oil. Load of bollocks, excuse my language, but a load of nonsense, absolute nonsense, because oil had never been prospected for in those type of conditions anywhere in the world. So it was entirely new. I think the two rigs were the Ocean Quest and the Ocean Tide. Right? These were self-propelled exploration rigs. And as far as I know, they're still on the go. They're still actually working away.
Yeah.
Clyde built, sure built. We don't mess around. We make a product that lasts. And in fact, at Lead Fox of Marathon, we when I worked in Marathon, we not only built those two rigs, but we then went on to build rigs for the Gulf of Mexico and the Persian Gulf, which stand no comparison to the rigs that you're building in the North Sea. You know, it's like there just isn't any comparisons. They're biscuit tins. They're tiny, tiny wee things. But we built them with American efficiency, apparently, right? And Mr. Fox was absolutely astounded at the quality. In fact, this I quote him. In fact, guys, the job's too good. I mean, too good a job with them. I don't know whether he wanted oil rigs to go into the Gulf of Mexico and then fail, because that's what some of them did.
Sort of obsolescence.
Aye, built in obsolescence. I know, right? You don't really want that, do you? That's no an advisable quality. So, all of these skills, you literally, as I said, probably the most sophisticated vessel that you'll build would be a naval vessel. If you can build them, build anything. There's nothing that gives you any.
Now, we built a North Sea ferry in Gullen, and that was as sophisticated as a Navy ship's, two engines, a whole shooting match, sailing
Right.
364 days a year. I had 1 day off in a year. And we built that, so it can be done, and we can do it again.
There's also a possibility of building rockets if we open up a Scottish
Back in the
spaceport.
Well, the Russians built the rockets and the Americans built the other bits, so we could do the same. We can get the rockets out for Russians, no problem.
Bit of a question. Can I touch back in on the whole, how you see the future? I mean, say McCall does, what's the potential, do you reckon, for opening up even more yards back in? Or do you think what's the scope over the next 20 years?
Davie's research is probably more current than mine, but there's absolutely no doubt that there are plenty of redundant yards that could easily have life breathed into them. Just the application of a bit of political will and some money, you know.
I'm thinking, I think they're going to spend a lot of money in yards, and they'll build a big covered dry dock that they build the warships. The argument we've placed in the consultation is that they should do the same in Govan. The big wet basin in Govan should be drained, covered, and you could build 2 ships similar to what the Germans did. I was looking at them, and Govan, that'd be the first thing I think. Then you have a position where the dry dock in the Greenock can take the QE2. It's a big dry dock. You should be able to develop that dry dock in some sort of way. There's plenty of land round about there to build big covered, but I mean, the potential's there. If they develop the oil in the Clyde, then you would think facilities quite close to that to build it.
Yeah.
And Govan, I would argue Govan should be going for merchant ships and eventually ferries and big ferries and cruises and that. And lower reaches should be going back, and with that big dry dock they've got there, open that up to build things. We've also got Rosyth. Remember, they're building a big aircraft carriers in Rosyth, and they've also got a submarine facility there. A massive area there that could be developed for merchant shipbuilding, repairing rigs and dismantling. I mean, so Rosyth, Greenock and Govan have got the potential there. I don't know what the potential is in Aberdeen and Dundee and places like that, but certainly potential is in Rosyth, Greenock and Govan to develop much more facilities to build merchant ships.
They're also going to need all the service boats that are running daily to each of these rigs. Those boats will need to be serviced, and the work that they do in moving materials, in storage and preparing drill pipe, all the environmental services. I expect if they were to be exploring there, I don't doubt for a second that it would be some of the strictest environmental rules in the world, which would develop an industry in itself.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, the one of the aspects of global warming is the fact that there's now becoming shipping possibilities in areas where they normally wouldn't have considered it to be practical. But the other thing is, and there's nothing surer than this, that they will be drilling for oil in places of great environmental sensitivity. And I think that one of the things that we could catch in the move towards that, because we are far-sighted and we're intelligent and we're ingenious, that we should actually be looking at how can we actually build vessels that could protect an environment in the event of something happening as happened in the Gulf of Mexico. How can we actually say potentially that's liable to happen? Because if a thing is possible to happen. Bet your boots it's going to happen. And what we don't want is areas of great natural beauty and you know, great environmental sensitivity to be destroyed. I mean, one of the things that really bugs me, you go through Lanark and it's just starting to return to its former beauty. Right? That used to be a waste site. It was desolate, you know, but that's what our system does. It just goes into an area, and you know, and everybody knows about the fracking possibilities in the new fracking legislation, which will only leave the Scottish Government to protect the environment. Will only leave them with planning permission. Everybody knows that. See if you've got a parliament that can be, sorry, it's no longer in existence. Nothing's going to stop these guys if it's, you know, there's a planning objection to fracking in some of the most beautiful areas in Scotland. Loch Lomond being one.
I mean, if we are going to invest, I think there's another big market, which is, we've got the wind, offshore wind off the west coast, which is amongst the strongest winds anywhere, and we're going to need thousands. There's no reason why you can't have either floating wind turbines or various things in the west coast up there, and there are hundreds of them. The need for these, they have to be very, very strong structurally to be able to put them there. Similarly for any tidal turbines. We're talking a massive untapped market that's going to be there for decades to come, and so we talk about
who's making the steel for the wind farms right now? Is it abroad?
All the turbines are made for Australia, all made abroad. There is a possibility of
we don't have any steel main
I mean,
capacity in Britain.
we spoke to a professor at Strathclyde, and they basically have the line there is there's massive amount of money being put into the development of big turbines. Now, the Strathclyde's at the cutting edge of some of the biggest turbines, but it's, all you get is an order maybe for one experimental turbine, and then once they've done all the development work, all the big orders for stuff goes abroad. So all the expertise in the technology is here, but then you don't get the manufacturing.
Just imagine if we'd have placed a patent restriction on telephones. We invented them. Just imagine. $1 trillion industry. Right? And you're right, that's that. Basically what they'll do is they'll actually come here, they'll exploit the ingenuity and the intelligence and the education system that we've got here, and then the actual nitty-gritty, the hard cash goes elsewhere. Absolutely no reason for that. No earthly reason whatsoever.
It
It's
must be a financial
political.
reason. It must be a financial reason as to why.
It's a political
No,
decision.
I mean, on the question of this wind energy, it's energy as a reserve matters. The policy is made by the UK government. Now, if it was a devolved matter, it would be done in an entirely different way. Their running was crazy open markets, and the result is the way they construct a contract, the only people are getting are foreign, nationally owned energy things. You've got the French energy company, you have the Chinese energy companies, and they are building all this, exploiting and taking all the profits abroad. Now, we can stop that if we're in independence, and keep the profits, the expertise, the technical construction, and the trained, skilled workers all here. We can only really do it if we take control of that.
Something happened here, maybe more than I did. The House of Lords took some renewable energy thing and done away with it in a one-day vote in the House of Lords.
Right.
The House of Lords could shut down the House of Parliament, like the Scottish Parliament, if it was, because they control it. I mean, you can't get your mind around it. These lunatics in the House of Lords took some of that stuff away. I mean, I don't know the details, as I heard it mentioned last night, but they have the power to shut down the Scottish Parliament. They must be genuinely elected. What kind of country do we live in?
We're going to get more powers, Davie, aren't we?
Oh, terrible.
The promise.
What do you think of what Scottish Labour are saying about the shipyards and what's going on?
Well, as far as I can make it, the Scottish Labour haven't said anything. I mean, you may be right, I have not seen anything. I was at a meeting with the shop stewards from all the defence industries about last year, and John Lamont was there, and Ian Davison, and I was arguing quite clearly that the yes vote is the only way of voting, the only way of safeguarding the ship on this, and I was the lone voice at that time. And I didn't get any argument from John Lamont or Ian Davison. Terrible. They did not argue. They say that, so the position, as far as I can make out, when BAE Systems were saying quite clearly that there was going to be a one-site option, that will be Scots and Yaris, meaning government will shut, they did not object to that. So if you don't object to something, you acquiesce by silence, you agree. So they agreed, in effect, that the government, after build the 3 OPV votes, would shut. That was their position. So you could, I'll go and ask them if you wish, but that was my understanding, because they did not argue against it. So I don't know what then. I emailed Duncan McNeil, who's the MSP, because I'm Duncan by way back, and put it to him about the argument about Carmack ferries and all that, and he emailed me back saying thanks, I'll take it up. So obviously he's going to be arguing, because he's the MSP for the local area, but he's in there arguing the argument about Carmack should be putting the ferries into Ferguson. So he's the only one at the moment that's come back to me and said, right, I'm with you, kind of thing, you know?
I think one of the things we have to remember is promises are just hot air if you get a no vote. They've lied back in '79 about what they were going to do, they lied back every time.
Yeah.
So I think the one thing we can share, there will be a reaction if there is a no vote to us, and all the promises of extra powers and protection of shipbuilding, frankly, I think the only way we can safeguard it must be a yes vote.
See, one of the things, you listen to I've been to all these meetings with Son of Saba, the Dick Westlands, and you hear the argument coming forward, and you're saying to yourself, that sounds pretty good. And you go, wait a minute, we were in power for 12 years, 13 years, didn't do any of these things. You know, I mean, it's a very strange position going, that sounds mad, but when you were in power, how do you know if you get in power again, you're going to do it again? I mean, I raised the position of these pensioners. We've got the lowest state pension in the European Union. Nobody tells you that is the reality of life. The Irish have got somewhere like £144 a week. The Irish have got 210. The Germans and the French have got about 300 quid a week. I did 2 years in the British Army. If I did my 2 years in the Wehrmacht or the Foreign Legion, it's about £300 a week of state pension instead of 144. But they never mention the fact that they never increased that state pension. It took them years before they got it lined up into inflation and retail price hikes and wages. Now, come independence, we will now tie the state pension to the best of the retail price index, up to the cost of living, or wages, or a guaranteed percentage. You know, so that's an important thing that people should know. But I see, you listen to them telling you the story, but even in power for 13 years, nothing happened. No, I'll say we, because I'm in the Labour Party. I'll stay in the Labour Party and hopefully dismantle it and start again, you know.
Well, I know that at the last May Day, I went there desperately hoping to meet Janet Lamont. Desperately hoping. Because what I did was I bought a wee carton of jelly beans. And I was looking forward to getting up and saying to Janet Lamont, this is what a handful of sweeties looks like. No free tuition, free health care for the elderly, free prescriptions, child care, right? Free travel for senior citizens. She described those things as a handful of sweeties. A handful of sweeties that Salmon had gave to the British electorate. I say this to Gianna Lamont. See, if she'd have been handing out sweeties, she'd have been sitting where Salmon's sitting. Salmon would have been in opposition. And that's the reality. And even now, when we're in the depths of this titanic struggle, right, she's saying if we get re-elected, tuition fees are unsustainable, you better get a university, son, as fast as you can. Well, you can still get them £9,000 up your shirt. All of these things are, you know, so that they've fully swallowed the whole neoliberal claptrap that unless something makes money, it's no, you know, it isn't worthwhile pursuing as a society. And I actually I stay in the main Largs to Glasgow line. And the decimation of the Scottish coal industry. You know, I know a lot of people, environmentalists in particular, are going, well, oh, that at least, you know, the upside of that is that, you know, it's environmentally beneficial. Every day, on an hourly basis, there's a train carrying 22 wagons with 45 tonne of coal, and each one of those wagons passes by my back door. But unfortunately, it's no gone for the pits in Cumnock to Hunterston to be exported out. It's coming for Colombia, it's coming for America, their cheap coal, right? It's coming in here. Now that cheap coal then goes to the power stations, right? Because a lot of the arguments about the cost of energy is it fluctuates in the world market, and you know, and it's oil and gas they talk about. They don't talk about coal, because coal's rock bottom, right? And that's coming into your country. Well, we as a society pay for the unemployment benefit of Cumnock miners and miners earn Grangemouth sitting in their arse. That's a social cost that isn't taken. That's not taken into account with the energy companies. But of course, it does give us cheap energy, doesn't it? No. £1.5 billion south of Scotland electricity board last year.
I think it's worth remembering we're the only country in the world that fully dismantled and doesn't own the grid. I mean, that's and even the European Union is saying this is madness.
What was it? The Venezuelan guy said, you know, it's like when you hand over services on which life depends, right, to bandits, because that's what they are. These guys are bandits. They actually know that old age pensioners will die because they can't afford to put their heating on, and they don't care. Now that's something that I think that in Scotland we do have an attitude to our old people and our young people and our sick. I'm sure that it's mirrored, more than mirrored, by people in England and Wales. Sure that I actually spoke on a platform with Leanne Woods, the president of Clyde Cymru. Identical, Davie, eh?
Right. Yep. Right.
Their situation's identical feelings. This is no a nationalism or a national question, which actually is about no being about working people. It's central to working people. It's central to the idea that, you know, that I feel sorry for workers in England. Who would they vote for? Who would they vote for? It need to be George Galloway's respect, man. If you're that way inclined.
I think it's important to remember that London is run by finance capital, and London runs the UK.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, they're saying on the one hand here in Scotland that the Labour Party's running around, Better Together's running around, the Yes campaign are scaremongering about the NHS. Have they want to talk to Andy Burnham? Because Andy Burnham, Labour's shadow health minister, is saying that the reforms that the coalition have put in place will destroy the health service inside 5 years.
How protected is the devolved element of the NHS in Scotland?
It won't be devolved at all. In fact, I'm going to go even further. See, even when we've got our own parliament, there'll be a tax on it. There'll be, because in a sense we could be viewed by what's happening, you know, the powers that be in England, as British Cuba. And I'm not talking about doing anything dramatic or radical. Just by concentrating on what is good for our people makes us an enemy of the British state.
I think it's worth remembering that some of the laws were passed to liberalise and privatise the health service in England are actually done under UK legislation. And some of these big healthcare countries could challenge the fact that they're not being applied in Scotland and demand to open it up.
Yep.
There's another point there that puts Scotland's healthcare in danger, and that's the Barnett formula.
Yes. Yes.
The more the health system in England is privatised, the less the English budget is, the less the Scottish budget is, the less we have to spend in protecting our NHS.
What Labour politicians are saying is the government spending on the health service in England is actually increasing, but that's because they're paying the money to private companies. How long will that last? Mrs Thatcher's dream was an NHS that was funded entirely by insurance. I don't know if anybody's had any experience of insurance companies. Everybody banged their motor. And then you go the second year to get your policy renewed, and the guy says, you'll get previous. Anyway, that's what happens in the health industry in the States. That if you've got cause to actually claim against your insurance, then when you go to renew your insurance, they increase the premiums or they off-list you. They'll not accept you. You then go to another insurance company and they say, you've got previous. This is what your policies will cost you.
Okay, I think we're any last remarks on either other reason why people must vote yes and
Well, I've got 7 grandchildren. I'm making sure I want a yes vote to make it protect their future. They don't end up in some stupid war somewhere. And they're looked after, and I've got a job negotiated by the trade unions at a decent wage.
Dr. Hilary Cass is the president of the Royal Society of Paediatricians, and she was commissioned by the Chief Medical Health Officer of England and Wales. Can't remember her name, but she's a Dane, somebody or other. And they produced a report together called "Our Children Deserve Better." But it was the stuff from Hilary Cass that really stuck in my head. 5 children a day die in Great Britain that if they lived in Sweden, they wouldn't die, because their diseases are preventable, curable, treatable. 5 children a day is the equivalent of a medium-sized senior secondary school disappearing each year in front of your very eyes. People say it's no broke.
thanks very much, Tam, Davie. Thank you.
Thank you.